I went for a cold dip this morning.
Ew.
It was the first time that I've ever done it by myself. Jack was there supervising, in case I died and drowned, but I didn't know what he would have done because he would not have jumped in the cold water if I actually needed help.
When you say cold dip, is that in the sea?
Is in a lock.
That sounds horrible.
It was actually really nice, but I think it was about 4 degrees in the water, but there was ice on the top because it's -3 outside at the moment.
Does Jack have to be there in case you seize up and freeze?
Honestly, I don't know that he would do much if I actually needed help because there's no way he would have got in the water.
Well, he would if he were dying. If he were drowning, he would.
I don't know. It's pretty cold. It's pretty chilly. But I don't know. I just feel weird if I were to go by myself. I wouldn't feel safe if I went by myself because at least even if something did happen, yeah, he could call someone to get someone to come and help. Hi.
Welcome to episode 6. Episode 6 of our podcast.
26 to Life, where after 26 years of friendship, Catherine and I have been friends for longer than a life sentence.
Well, so now we're going to do a podcast together.
Yeah, right.
And we sound a bit flat this morning. I think we're both sleepy.
Should we do that again?
Or just wake up.
Oh, wow.
Anyway, that's Rosie because she's an idiot who didn't introduce herself. She only introduced me because I'm the most important in the room. So today, Rosie's telling me a story. Finally, she's doing some work. Jesus Christ.
We have literally been 50-50 up until this point.
Carrying this podcast. And, do you know what, guys?
Does your back hurt?
Yeah. Pull her. I've been carrying this friendship for 26 years.
Whoa. That's a long time.
It is a long time. So,
to just be keeping us together. I've been trying to get rid of you for 27 years and it's been hard. It's been a rough journey. I don't like this. I'm not enjoying this dynamic right now.
I'm joking. Before we start, please note that this episode and this podcast in general contain some difficult themes, including murder, suicide, sexual assault, kidnapping, domestic violence. As I've been told by Rosie, this episode in particular deals with homophobic related violence. So please only listen if you are feeling strong enough. Please think very carefully about listening with children. And as always, reach out for help from people if you need to. If these things affect you, no one should deal with it alone. Okay,
so the story that I'm talking to you about today is one about a man that there's not going to be any oh my God, guess who did it kind of thing. I'm telling you from the start who the murderer was, because that's not really what this story is about. This story is about how it was dealt with and how he was able to get away with it. So between 2014 and 2015, a man named Stephen Port murdered 4 young men and was able to get away with it for months when the exact system that is supposed to protect us failed miserably. This story led to an inquest into the Metropolitan Police and hopefully set a precedent on how cases are dealt with, no matter who's involved. Although there's still...
Oh, God, is it because... Oh, right.
What?
Because when it's gay people, they don't care.
It's not... So that's... Some people came to that conclusion, yes. But that's... I'll talk about the inquest and all the investigations done into the Metropolitan Police towards the end of this. So we can decide. But I try to stay objective when I was researching this and writing my script, but it was really hard not to get angry. And I can only imagine how the families of the victims felt during this process, knowing that something was happening and nobody was listening, you know? Mm-hmm. And then afterwards to know that at least 3 of these 4 deaths could have been prevented is just, it's truly infuriating. So, although the story...
I'll stay impartial.
You can try, but I don't know how. how much that's
I'm
gonna.
impartial.
Yeah, we'll see how that goes. So, although this story officially starts years prior to this, I'm going to start by telling you about a 999 call that was made in the early hours of the 19th of June 2014. Do you want to be 999 or do you want to be Stephen Port?
I'll be 999.
Okay, go ahead.
Emergency ambulance. What's the address of the emergency?
Cook Street. There's a young boy. Looks like he's collapsed outside. I don't know.
Outside of which number?
Between 4758.
Sorry?
4758, I think.
47 Cook Street.
Yeah.
What area?
Barking. Looks like he's collapsed or had a seizure or something, or he's just drunk.
What's the telephone number you're calling from?
I'm just going to get in my car. I've got to get to my car. The parking.
Don't worry about that. What's the telephone number you are calling from? Hello?
That's when Stephen Port hangs up. 999 traces the call and then calls him back.
Hello, it's the ambulance service here. We were cut off. Can you confirm the location?
Oh, I've just driven away now.
Where? What? Sorry.
Yeah. Yeah.
Sorry. My parking was running out. Okay, sorry. Back in character. Where was it they were outside of?
Cook Street.
What door number?
I don't know. I didn't look.
You said 47 before.
Yeah, 47. Yeah.
And you think that they'd had a seizure, is that correct?
Yeah, a man on the floor. Yeah.
Were you just passing by in your car?
Yes.
And you drove past now and you're no longer there?
That's right.
How old did he look roughly, sir?
20?
Do you know if he was awake?
No.
Do you know if he was breathing?
No, I don't know.
Did you see anything happen at all?
No.
No. You just think that he possibly had a seizure and he was lying there on the floor?
Yes. So that was the 999 call that Stephen Port himself made, reporting a young man outside a block of flats in Barking. So the first responders...
from Barking. What?
This is a really long episode, so like... It's already going to be super long. We can't have you singing in the middle of it.
Catherine, shut up!
Yeah, we literally can't. I'm sorry. It's already going to be about 3 hours long.
Okay.
The first responders, when they arrived, found a...
fun, guys.
I will actually kill you. I'll actually kill you.
Okay, first responders. Barking.
Found a young man that had clearly been dead for several hours, if not longer, and so the police were called immediately. The young man was 23-year-old Anthony Wargate. Anthony was a fashion student at Middlesex University and had aspirations to be a famous designer one day. As any typical student, Anthony was terrible with money, and so his friends told police that he had resorted to being a gay escort on occasion, which is where he had been going on June 17th. Supposedly, a man named Joe Dean had offered Anthony £800 to spend the night with him, but when he left to get the train to Barking, little did his friends know that that would be the last time that they would see Anthony alive. When they started looking at his body and the coroner then took him and did his own investigations, they found that Anthony was wearing a t-shirt that was far too big for him. They found a small bottle of GHB, the date rape drug. You know, you've heard of that, GHB?
Is that like Rohypnol?
Yeah, it's called gamma hydroxybutate or something like that, I think. I wouldn't be able to say it properly even if I tried. But I think it has a similar effect to that.
Okay.
So they found a small bottle of that in his pocket. His jean zipper was undone and his underwear were back to front and inside out. He also had bruises underneath his arms. So when paired with the fact that his autopsy found that he died from a GHB overdose, you'd think that with all of the other things, it would be suspicious, right? Like the fact that his underwear was on inside out, back to front, the fact that he didn't live in Barking.
Yeah.
But no, they took swabs and everything else, but nothing was tested, which is ridiculous because...
Sorry, so how are they saying he died? He date raped himself and died?
Exactly. They're saying that he just took GHB himself and it was a self-administered overdose. And
but it's not a drug that gets you high. It's like a drug that knocks you out.
Honestly. I thought you were being impartial, Kath.
Oh, sorry. Great investigation work, guys. Well done. Everybody home for 4:30. Fabulous work.
Yeah. Dinner on the
June,
table.
weather's nice. Pub garden.
Yeah. So they took swabs of everything,
Understandable. Yeah.
but they didn't test anything.
Well,
So
why would they?
even though it's a date rape drug, you would think, but they
benefit
didn't.
of the doubt, heroes. Benefit of the doubt.
They didn't test anything. So the police traced the 999 call back to Stephen Port, who lived in the block of flats
Innocent
that
bystander.
this man was outside of. So he told the operator that he'd driven away, but he had actually just gone inside, past the body, into his flat. What? He told the operator that he was driving past. Yeah. He then told the police that he found the body on his way home from work and that he'd never seen Anthony. He didn't know Anthony. He didn't have any idea who this man was. However, what Stephen didn't know is that Anthony was always quite careful, and so he would always get an address and a postcode beforehand. He would always tell a friend where he was going, and then share the name and a picture of the person that he was meeting with a friend, which is, I mean, very, very clever. You should always be doing this, no matter who you're going to meet, where you're going to meet them, even if it's a public place. You need to tell someone where you're going. You need to send them a picture of who you're going with, a name, a postcode, a pin location, anything. Just be safe, be careful. You don't know who you're meeting at the end of the day, especially when you're meeting
do what I do and don't leave the house.
Or that too. So when the police spoke to Anthony's friends and they said, yeah, he sent a picture of the man that he was going to meet, this Joe Dean, they showed the police the picture of the person that he was meeting on the 17th of June, and it was Stephen Port. They'd already met him. So they knew that Stephen had been lying. They knew that he had known Anthony before he had died, and that Anthony had been with Stephen Port before he died. So they interviewed Stephen again, knowing full well that he'd already been dishonest, and he changed his story to say, yes, that he had met Anthony for sex, and then he'd gone to work because he works a late shift. He works as a chef at the bus depot.
What?
Yeah. It was funny because he said that he was a chef, and then when I looked into other articles, it specified that he was a chef at the bus depot, and I was like, that's different to what I was imagining.
Sorry, I don't understand. So at the bus depot, do they take their break at the depot and get food?
Maybe. Or maybe they've got, like, I don't know, maybe if they've got a cafe or something for people to go to. I don't know. But yeah, anyway. But he was working the late shift. So he left late at night and he got back at about 4 a.m.
Well, high-end restaurants are open late.
It's true. Or 24 hours.
24 hours.
And so he said that he'd met him for sex. He'd gone to work. And then when he came home from work at around 4 a.m., he found him dead in his bed. And so he said that he panicked, he dragged the body outside because he was worried that the police would think that he had murdered him. He said that to police in this interview.
You're looking at me like you want a reaction, but you also told me to stay impartial, so I'm trying.
Okay, if they did a simple search for Stephen Port in their National Police database, they would have also seen that Stephen Port had been accused of drugging and raping someone in 2012, just 2 years prior. But they didn't do that search until after the fact. Do you have anything to say?
Just, I'm listening, I'm learning, and I'll make my judgment at the end.
Okay. Nonetheless, police basically said that Anthony's death was odd but not suspicious. For anyone who's listening to the Spotify on this, I just rolled my eyes, like, all the way around.
My face is completely impartial and completely
So they did arrest Stephen for perversion.
Odd but suspicious.
Yeah.
An overdose isn't odd. An overdose is just an overdose.
Yeah, but it's...
This is like when they said, yes, I take responsibility, but I'm not guilty. With Sabina Nessa. He said, yeah, I take responsibility, but I'm not guilty.
Yeah,
gosh, she doesn't even remember my case.
Okay, please. I do, I swear.
Sorry, odd but not suspicious. Yeah. Okay.
It just doesn't... I don't know. A lot of people after this said that they think that they didn't want to... They just thought because he was an escort that it was kind of... They just didn't want to look into it further. They just blamed the fact that he was an escort,
Yeah.
essentially. But they did arrest Stephen for perversion of justice, and he was later released on bail, but he was never actually linked to Anthony's death as anything more than just getting in the way of the investigation, essentially. The victim's mother told the police that she thought it was murder and there was something more to it. But the police,
well, obviously.
The police told her, and I quote, it was probably drugs. That was what she was told. The mother of the victim, Anthony Walgate's mum.
Right, okay.
On the 23rd of August, a 22-year-old man called Gabriel Cavari had moved in with Stephen. He'd moved to London after finishing uni, and I found two different reports here. One said that he wanted to become a translator, and the other person said that he wanted to become an English teacher. But either way, he had aspirations as well. He wanted to do something with language, exactly. However, not long after moving in, he told his friend that he didn't want to sleep in Stephen's bed, and so he'd been sleeping on the sofa. But it was a one-bedroom flat, so I'm not entirely sure why he moved there. But still. He meets Stephen's neighbour, and he tells his neighbour, Stephen is not who you think he is. He's a bad man. So then a few days later, when his neighbour, Ryan, comments and says that he hasn't seen Gabriel in a while, Stephen told him that he'd moved back home and then he'd picked up an illness and died. This was all in the space of 4 days. Because on the 28th of August, which, bearing in mind that he'd moved in on the 23rd, Gabriel was found dead in a graveyard 500 metres from Stephen's flat. He too had a bottle of GHB, I was about to say GHB in his pocket, and his death was also declared not suspicious. Therefore, a post-mortem examination was not carried out.
Did they speak to this Ryan guy?
No, not until after the fact.
Okay, and so he told Ryan he's moved home, he's gotten sick and he's died.
Yeah.
And Ryan just thought, yeah, all right, it's fine. No worries.
And then, a day later, he was actually found dead 500 metres from the house.
And Ryan didn't come forward and say, excuse me. He did.
I got nothing.
But was it reported?
Oh, yeah. Yeah. It was quite a big case.
That a dead man was found in the graveyard.
Yeah.
And Ryan saw that and just thought, yeah, that's the illness he was talking about.
Yeah. Honestly, there's more.
Okay.
There's more.
So we've now got two young men who have died.
2 young men. One on Stephen Port's doorstep, and the second 500 metres from Stephen Port's house. Apartment block.
I just want to make sure I know their names better than I know Stephen Port. So the first guy who died?
Anthony Walgate. And the second was Gabriel Cavari.
Anthony Walgate and Gabriel Cavari. The only 2 current non-idiots in this entire thing.
Yeah, genuinely. So it would be later found that some of the messages that Gabriel had last sent to his friend were pictures that he had taken from inside Port's apartment, as well as a pin drop of his location in his new apartment. And if they just checked his phone, done some basic investigative work, then they could have linked him to Stephen Port then and there. Aside from the fact that it was also 500 metres from his apartment, he was on bail for lying about another death that he was connected to, and he had previous accusations of drugging and rape. But
this is another situation that angers me because it's that thing of they've done everything right. Absolutely everything. You know, when we talk about how to keep yourself safe, they've done it.
Yeah.
All of it.
Yep.
Someone knew their locations. Everyone knew everything. And it still didn't keep them safe. And afterwards, it still didn't catch the person who'd done it. Because, I'm guessing, because the police didn't feel that they were valuable enough, or their lifestyle didn't align with, I don't know, what the police felt that they should align with.
Yeah, truly. There are a lot of reports of people questioning whether it would have been dealt the same if it was in Chelsea and it was 2 white straight men, or if it were 2...
Was Anthony not white?
No, I think no, they were all white, but it
Oh, okay.
was whether or not that they were rich,
Ish.
white,
Right.
straight men. You
No, of
know
course it
that.
wouldn't. There would be such an uproar, and I also think if they hadn't been gay,
Yeah, exactly.
I'm guessing Gabriel was gay.
Yeah.
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 Exactly.
So if yeah.
So worse still, I mean, if it can get any worse, is that the police failed to make contact with Gabriel's family, and when speaking to the news, they referred to him as being Lithuanian when he was actually from Slovakia, which is just disrespectful. Like, at least get his nationality correct, you know, if at the very least. But the fact that they didn't contact his family, like,
Yeah.
I cannot, like, why is that falling through the cracks? That's not something that should not be done. That should be a priority when you find someone dead,
100%.
whether or
And
not.
usually you hear like this person is not being identified at this time until the next of kin is informed. You don't sort of go, oh, and by the way. So to avoid the family finding out on the news.
Exactly.
Oh,
Infuriating. Infuriating. So, despite the police investigations being pretty much non-existent, it was around this time you start hearing a lot more about how friends and family are doing their own investigations, and they're trying to piece things together and gather their own information to be able to provide to the police. So, moving on, but I will be coming back to that, a man named Daniel Whitworth. So we have Anthony Walgate, Gabriel Cavari, and now Daniel Whitworth, who on the 18th of September, he agreed to meet Port in Barking.
and this
Sound
is all in
familiar?
the same year.
This is all in the same year, yes. Yeah, so this is, the first was in June, and then August, and then September. So this is like 23 days after Gabriel had been found, or something like that. So he agrees to meet Port in Barking, and we pretty much have no idea what happened after he arrives at Port's apartment. But we do know that he too was found dead on the 20th of September in the same graveyard, propped up against the same wall that Cavari was, in the same position.
Oh, my life.
And
do we know under what pretext he met him? Like, I know with Anthony, he was an escort. Gabriel needed somewhere to live, or we think, we don't know.
There were a few apps that they were using. He was known as the Grinder Killer, so it was through apps that he found a lot of his victims. Yeah,
don't give him a name.
Oof, hate him. So he also had bed sheets that he was sitting on, and he also had a bottle of GHB on his person, so the same as Anthony and Gabriel. But he also had what appeared to be a suicide note in which he confessed to him killing Gabriel Cavari just a few weeks before.
How old was he?
He was 21. So they were all pretty young.
Young men, yeah.
Yeah, exactly. And so if the police had checked Daniel's phone records, they could have shown that Daniel was not in Barking on the night that Gabriel was murdered. So there was no way he could have been involved in his death.
The police didn't actually believe that, did they?
Oh, yeah. No, they believed it. Yeah, they believed it.
But they said that his wasn't a murder.
Yeah, they said that
it wasn't a murder, but now that he said that he's murdered him, they've said, yes, we think he murdered him.
Yeah, they've just taken it at face value. Oh, wait, you don't...
What are they doing? I don't understand.
Okay, wait. Let's go back. So, someone called John Luck reached out. So Gabriel had a boyfriend in Spain called Thierry. And John Luck and somehow this man called John Luck and Thierry got in contact with each other. And because Thierry found out that, I mean, he was friends with him on Facebook or something, and John told Thierry that Gabriel had been dating someone called Dan, supposedly Daniel, and they had gone to a sex party together. And then when Gabriel's boyfriend Thierry told John that Gabriel was dead, John Luck said he expected to have the police knocking on his door because his DNA would have been on him, and that there would have been messages on his phone from them because they'd been in contact. And he also said, I hope he wasn't murdered or something like that.
So Thierry told John that he was dead.
Yeah.
And
then John
said,
I hope he wasn't murdered.
And John
then,
is actually John.
No, it turns out John was Stephen Port.
Oh, my life.
But he also said to Gabriel, he also said to Thierry, maybe Dan accidentally killed Gabriel and then killed himself because he felt guilty.
And let me guess, Dan doesn't exist.
No, Dan is the guy that's died. Daniel.
Oh my God!
Daniel Whitworth is the man that has also been found dead.
Right, so let me just confirm.
Clarify. Go ahead.
Daniel, our third victim, Dan, has now died.
Yeah, he had a suicide note.
Thierry is Gabriel's boyfriend in Spain.
Yes.
And he reaches out to someone called John Luck. This man has terrible aliases, by the way.
Joe Dean
and John Luck. Oh my God. Anyway, he reached out to him because he was a friend with Gabriel on Facebook, Instagram, something like that. And says he's died. Did you know he's died?
Well, he basically, at first, he's basically trying to get more information, trying to figure out his last movements, and basically trying to find out more information, him trying to do his own investigation because he doesn't believe that it wasn't suspicious.
So John Luck says, oh no, I'm expecting them to come and knock on my door at any point because he will have my DNA on him. He has messages from me. He was dating a guy called Dan. He has a boyfriend called Dan here. And
they went to a sex party.
They went to a sex party, and I hope he wasn't murdered. Okay, so that's what John Luck is saying. Were Gabriel and Dan ever actually dating, or is that just a made-up thing from what we can see?
So if police had checked the phone records, like I said, so the police believe this whole nonsense, the suicide note. But if they had checked his phone records, not only would they have seen that Dan wasn't embarking on the night that Gabriel died, so there is no way he could have been involved in his death, but there was also no evidence to show that they had ever contacted each other, ever crossed paths, like anything that to show that they could even remotely know each other.
But according to the police, they're two gay people, so they must know each other.
According to the police, some note was in this man's hand, and so it must have been real.
Okay, I'm with you. I'm impartial though. I'm still still on the fence.
Oh, okay. Oh, and also in this letter it said BTW, don't blame the man I was with last night. And the police, guess who the police thought that he must have been referring to?
Stephen Paul.
No. They assumed that he was talking about the homeless man that was sleeping in the graveyard that he was found in. That's what they assumed. So in his suicide note, it said, don't blame the man I was with last night. And they thought oh, okay, that's great. That homeless man is off the hook.
Yeah, that's Dave the drunk who's over there keeping warm.
And we've just confirmed that he's innocent because this fake suicide note says so.
Well done. Excellent detective work here.
Once again, they didn't do any forensic tests. They took samples from the bed sheets but didn't send anything off. And it was later found that there were fingerprints on the vial of GHB that he found. There were fingerprints on the suicide note, but none of it was taken. None of it was collected. And if they had collected that and sent it away, they would have found Stephen Port's DNA and fingerprints on
which was
everything.
In the system because he'd been arrested before.
Exactly.
So his fingerprints and everything were in the system.
They would have been able to link it to DNA that they should have collected from Anthony and from Gabriel and from the last two cases that they were dealing with. So far,
there's 2 deaths that they are currently responsible for.
Yeah, exactly. And also, this Daniel was found in exactly the same place as Gabriel, exactly the same graveyard, 500 meters from Stephen Port's house, propped up in the same position against the same wall. It's not. They were even. She was the worst. Horrible. Not the worst part, because that's by far not the worst part. The same dog walker found both bodies
Oh
3
my
weeks apart.
life! I'm sorry. If you found one body, stop taking the route.
Yeah, but you would think, what are the chances of finding 2?
Guarantee after she's been there a second time, she doesn't go through that graveyard anymore.
Yeah, she's not going through that anymore.
Jesus
Very
Christ.
crazy.
I'm surprised they didn't suspect her.
Yes. But, so despite all of this, the police closed the investigation even before they'd received the final post-mortem report.
Oh, I've got a headache doing this one. I'm annoyed by everyone.
You triggered. I'm sorry.
I just feel like I'm surprised that they didn't arrest the dog walker. Do you know what it is? Is I listened to an episode this morning of True Crime Obsessed, which is my favourite true crime podcast. Actually, I've got 2. That and I Think Not. They're my 2 favourites.
And 26 to Life.
And 26 to Life. I can't listen to this though because this is me talking, so I can't listen to it. And they were talking about an episode of Worst Ex Ever, where it's so angering. Like, this woman is raped by her ex-boyfriend, and then the ex-boyfriend sets her up, and they believe everything the ex-boyfriend does, and she ends up spending like 150 days in prison. Yeah. And they never, and like, it's so angering because they immediately go for her, and they fall hook, line and sinker for all this like manipulation. And so I've listened to that and I was angered by it. And now I've got this with 3 innocent boys who have died, 2 of them at least that could have been very, very preventable.
Yeah.
One of them who the murderer could have been caught far, immediately, basically.
Yeah. Yeah. Yeah, exactly. 100%.
And so when you decide to sign up to be a police officer or, I don't know, part of law enforcement, I just don't understand. Like, is your aim not to make the world a better place? Because if it's not, then get out. I think a lot of the time it's like not a lot of the time, but I think some of the time it's like a power trip. Although I'm not that surprised.
For sure.
I mean, I dealt with some incredible police officers when I was dealing with the police system, but I also dealt with a detective who was freaking awful and decided to befriend my ex's mum.
That's the thing, is that I don't want to come in here bashing the whole police system, because there are good police officers. There are people that genuinely care, but there are some issues in the system that need to be addressed.
But it's not even that. Is if there was a bad egg, if there was one person who was making those mistakes, surely there should be enough procedures and protocols in place, and surely there should be enough good officers around them to say, sorry, no, what you're doing, I don't like that. Like, in the teaching profession, I would like to think that if there was a teacher who was not good for the children, that there'd be enough good people around who've gone into that vocation who would say, I don't like how they're treating the children, or I don't like how they're doing this.
It's that whole concept of just like staying quiet and just not saying anything. And that story, that poem that you wrote after Sabina Nessa,
top down,
that poem that you wrote in your Sabina Nessa case about, because you didn't say anything, you're saying it's not your fault. But it is still your fault, because you're staying quiet and you're not speaking up, and that you need to speak up to make a difference, because it's just unacceptable. But if we go back to
Daniel has been found. Quick recap. Daniel's been found with a suicide note in his pocket saying it wasn't the tramp.
Yeah.
Or the homeless person.
Saying that he killed Gabriel and he killed himself, and it wasn't anything to do with the man that I was with last night. The police took this at face value. They asked his family to check the handwriting, and his dad said, I can't be sure, and they were just like, that's good enough for us, and confirmed that it was
If you ask my dad, is that your daughter's handwriting? He'd be like, I don't know.
Genuinely, honestly, stupid. So then that was all in.
And we've also had Thierry talking to
John Luck, who was actually Stephen Port. Yes. And I mean, Thierry had told John multiple times that he should go to the police and he needs to talk to the police if he had seen Dan the night before, blah, 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 if he'd seen Gabriel, etc., etc. And obviously John never actually went. And Thierry also passed this information on to the police, but the police just ignored Thierry. The police ignored multiple friends of Gabriel that had tried to pass them on relevant information. So now, on the 23rd of March, which is now 2015, Stephen is finally taken to court for perverting the course of justice in regards to Anthony Walgate's death, and is sentenced to 8 months, but is released with a tag on the 4th of June. So he spent, 2.5 months in prison and now has a tag, and they just released him again. But anyway. And then just 3 months after that, on the 13th of September, and I was thinking, because I thought...
So it was a non-violent crime. That's why they let him out.
Yeah. Well, yeah, okay, sure.
Yeah.
But then with the tag, I usually thought that if you came out early, you had to do the rest of your sentence with the tag on.
No, so I don't know exactly, but as far as I'm aware, it's like you can go out on tag, and then if it's a non-violent crime, I'm pretty sure you only do like 50% of your time.
Mm-hmm.
And then if it's like you've got out early, say his was 6 months, let's say his was 8 months, half of it was 4 months, and he's got out after 2.5 months.
Yeah.
He would only have to do the month and a half on tag.
Okay.
And then he remains on licence for another 4 months, I think. And so at any point, if he was arrested in that 4 months, he would go back and do his full 8 months. Does that make sense?
Okay. Yes.
I think.
So on the 13th of September, which would have been 3 months after he was released in June, so he wouldn't have had his tag at this point, presumably. At around 3 a.m, he meets Jack Taylor at Barking Station. So he must not have had his tag, because otherwise he wouldn't have been allowed out at 3 a.m.
Although apparently the police just ignore this dude, so...
Yeah, so they don't really care anyway.
Let's be honest.
So Jack Taylor is 25 years old. They've been chatting on Grindr, and Stephen invites him to his house. And Jack's been out at the club. It's like 3 a.m. He thought, yeah, okay, why not? A little booty call. So this was 3 a.m. in the morning, and before 7:30 a.m, Stephen Port has blocked Jack Taylor on Grindr, thus deleting all of their messages between themselves, and then he also uninstalled Grindr and deleted his account. But that's not suspicious, obviously. At this point, he had another flatmate, and he had sent him a string of messages telling him that he wasn't allowed to come home that day, which we can now assume is because Jack was dead in the flat and he didn't want his housemate to find a dead body. And I'm also just so confused as to how he has a flatmate when it's literally a one-bed flat. But anyway...
House prices in London, man.
Tell me about it. Jack lived with his family, so when he didn't come home, they knew immediately that something was wrong. He was really close with his family, and his mum said that he would always call or message if he wasn't going to come home. So they immediately reported him missing, but he was found dead on the 14th of September in the same graveyard as Gabriel Cavari and Daniel Whitworth, in the same position, but just on the other side of the wall that the other two were found in. He also had a bottle of GHB in his pocket, as well as medical wipes and a tourniquet.
Why would he have a tourniquet?
Because apparently he was injecting GHB directly into his bloodstream. I have no idea. Genuinely, no idea. And guess what the police said?
He, I don't know, fell and hit his head and it was an accident.
It was not suspicious.
Please tell me Jack's mother was like, I'm having none of this.
So Jack's parents insisted that he was very anti-drug. So there is no way he would have taken GHB.
This is like finding me with a bottle of GHB.
Exactly. And so, yeah, they were like, there's no way he would have taken the drugs, let alone overdosed from it. Like, he wouldn't have even known what to do with a syringe to be able to inject something. Like, there's no way. He was so anti-drugs. The pathologist certified that his cause of death was a mix of drug and alcohol overdose, because obviously Jack had been at the club the night before, that alcohol often makes the effects of GHB worse, and so that was the cause of death. So even after this bit I'd written in capitals because I was so mad. Even after 3 gay men are found dead in the same place within the same year, as well as a 4th just 500 metres away, the police still did not think that this was suspicious, nor did they link any of them together. Or
I
even
don't buy it.
remotely consider that there was a serial killer. They genuinely just thought that it was a huge coincidence that they had all died from self-administered overdoses and died propped up against the same wall in the same graveyard right down the road from someone that had been associated with a murder not a year prior and had also been accused of rape 2 years before that.
I don't buy it. I think it was just too much hard work for people that they didn't care about. Genuinely, they thought it's just not worth the time or the effort. Like, there's no way. Either you're an idiot,
Very
or
impartial.
you are homophobic, and it's not just about being gay, it's also about what they consider to be like vulnerable lifestyle, being an escort or being on dating sites. But if you think about it, that's what 99% of the population is on when it comes to meeting someone now.
Exactly. And 2014, 2015 wasn't that long ago. That, like, yeah, okay, it was 10 years now, but there's not that much that has changed in the way that the world works, you know? It's
No,
not
not
that
in terms
different.
of dating sites, no.
Exactly. It wasn't, it shouldn't have fallen through the cracks in this way.
Yeah, I just don't buy that it did. I just think they hoped that it would go away and that people wouldn't care enough about these young men, whether that be because of their sexual orientation or because, oh, well, they weren't keeping themselves safe going to meet someone in the middle of the night.
Yeah.
And I think they hoped it would just disappear.
Yeah. It really sucks. That really sucks. So, for a whole month, Jack Taylor's family provided evidence to the police to show links between the 4 deaths. His sisters had extensive notes on all of the different cases, their own investigations that they had done to these 4 cases in the area. And the police continued to say that there was no reason to believe that the 4 deaths were linked. The only information that they had was that there was a CCTV footage of Jack meeting an unknown man at Barking Station, and they got a shot of this man in Barking Station with Jack on the night that he was missing. The family had to convince the police to release this image to the public so they could help identify the man. And it was only when a detective from Anthony Walgate's investigation happened to be talking to a detective from Jack Taylor's investigation, and they just happened to have that CCTV image in front of them, that a detective from Walgate's case said, I know that man. I recognise that man from Anthony Walgate's case, and that man is Stephen Port. And it was only by pure chance that...
But it shouldn't be chance.
No,
you are dealing with the same MO, the same everything in the same area. You have this guy who's actually really dodgily involved in the first one because he's like, no, I've just driven off now. Sorry, bye.
Yeah.
And
now he has a criminal record as well.
And you're not... It shouldn't have been by chance. Like, I just don't understand that.
Exactly. No, 100%. And then when they eventually questioned Stephen, he said he didn't recognise his name, he didn't recognise the pictures, he'd never seen him before, never spoken to him, never had sex with him, never interacted with him, didn't have a clue who Jack Taylor was. But finally, they tested all of the DNA, they collected all of the fingerprints and all of that information. There was DNA on the bed sheets under Daniel Whitworth. There were swabs from the victims, directly sex swabs, they call them, fingerprints on the suicide note, and fingerprints on the vials of the drug. And all of this DNA and forensic evidence pretty much confirmed Port's involvement in all 4 of the deaths. Ridiculous, because they should have done that months ago. They also looked through his laptop and discovered an obsession with violent porn, drug and rape-based porn, especially that involving young men. And I mean, that laptop, they had access to that at the beginning, I'm pretty sure. I remember reading, so they could have found that out.
And if not, they would have been able to. There was enough to get a warrant to.
Exactly. Yeah. So he was obviously arrested and charged, and during the trial, his stories start to change. He says that he did actually meet Jack Taylor, obviously, because we have CCTV footage to prove that you met Jack Taylor. And he had come to his apartment, but then they'd gone to the graveyard to have sex. Jack had administered GHB to himself, and Stephen had left him, and he was alive and well when he left him, but then he must have died after he had left in the graveyard in the same position where Gabriel was. But jury didn't buy it. And remember the suicide note that was found on Dan's body, confessing to Gabriel's death. A forensic expert found that it was an exact match for Stephen's handwriting. And that the paper was also an exact match for a notepad that they found in Stephen's apartment. So he then changed his story to say that he did write it, but that Dan had dictated it to him.
Shut up.
Honestly, this guy's a mastermind. Don't know how he was caught.
Do you know what? The ridiculousness of it is that we see these really intricate cases that there's so and they managed to track them down.
Yeah.
But this, where he literally laid it out on a plate for them, because they couldn't be bothered.
Yeah, genuinely. Finally, in November 2016, Port was convicted of a total of 22 offences against 11 men, including drugging and sex offences against 7 men who survived their encounters with him. So after all of this came out, there were several other men that came forward and shared their experiences with Stephen. There had been multiple cases of him drugging men, raping them. Some cases where the young men had been able to get away, but others where, unfortunately...
Sorry, you said 11.
11 men, including drugging and sex offences against 7 other. So there was 11, including the 4 that we've spoken about today.
Okay, right. So of the 11, 4 died.
Yes,
7
yes, exactly.
Didn't. Okay.
Yeah, but Scotland Yard believes that there could be more victims, and they're actually reviewing 58 other deaths in London spanning 4 years that involve GHB, but he hasn't been connected to any of those yet. He is serving a whole life sentence, so the judge told Port that he will never be released, and in his sentencing remarks, the judge actually described Port as wicked and monstrous. So I am very relieved to hear that he was caught and he was sentenced, and he will never be on the streets ever again. Thank goodness.
I am, but at the same time, no. Like those 3 young men, potentially even 4 if they had looked in. I don't know what the situation was with the people who were sexually assaulted by him previously, but 3 of those men could have been alive.
Yeah. So some of the men that were sexually assaulted by Stephen, not all of them were before the murders. Some of them were dotted in between. So even between his murders, he would be meeting up with men that and be raping them, which I don't know whether the murders were planned. That's the thing, is that it was never said specifically that he intended to murder, or whether it was just he accidentally gave them too much GHB, he murdered them, and then he just had to dispose of the body. So it seems, because there were obviously people that were raped and drugged by him and survived, and he let them go the next morning, that perhaps murder wasn't actually his intent, but
he also didn't care enough to stop after it had happened. Like, let's say that
exactly, it
first
didn't
one
panic
was
him and say,
no, and let's say that first one was Anthony and he dumped him on the street, then he just found a different place to leave the bodies. Like,
exactly.
so who did they all get fired, all these police officers?
So this led into several investigations into the Metropolitan Police.
And they were all fired?
Unfortunately not. I've got a few quotes for us. A
Wow.
spokesman for the Mayor of London said that the quality of the Met's investigation into the murders raised a number of concerns, particularly around homophobia. It is vital that London's LGBTQ plus community has confidence in our police, and the Met are able to gain the trust and confidence of all the communities it serves, so that every Londoner, regardless of background or postcode, can feel safe, protected and served. So the Independent Office of Police Conduct, the IOPC, also known as the police watchdog, identified systemic failings. However, none of the officers investigated for potential misconduct will be disciplined, and just 9 are required to improve their standards.
What?
It was also suggested in
When was this done? When was this done?
That was... it was between 2016 and 2021. But I think that was a 2018
right,
report.
because then the
Wait, there's more.
Okay, but I just want to clarify. I wonder if that would be different, and I'm really hoping it would be, if since the Sarah Everard case, then they said that there had been a number of times that Wayne Couzens had displayed dangerous behaviour. This is another case of they're seeing the low-level behaviour, they're letting it go, and it will escalate.
Yeah. It was also suggested that stereotyping and unconscious bias may have detrimentally affected the decision-making and contributed to the failure to identify Stephen Port as a perpetrator sooner, which is suggested. May have. Yeah, okay, like, talk about an understatement. In December...
But is that unconscious bias towards Stephen Port? No, that's unconscious bias towards the victims.
I think both. One of the quotes I have is that there is a lack of understanding of the lifestyles of those that they were investigating. What? Which I don't know how I feel about that quote, because...
Neither do I.
It's just...
Young people use dating apps.
Yeah.
And because they don't understand that young people use dating apps, it therefore means it's okay that 4 young men have died.
Thought you were being impartial, Catherine.
You said I could make my judgment at the end.
But honestly, genuinely, it sounds to me as if there are a lot of excuses. In December 2021, there was another inquest, a jury inquest, and they found that the Metropolitan Police failings had probably contributed to the deaths of 3 of the victims, with a direct quote from the Minister for Crime and Police and saying, quote, "The government and the police we serve expect the highest standards from the police as they carry out their vital work protecting the public and investigating serious crimes. The conclusions of the inquest have shown that those standards were not met and that investigative failures probably contributed to the deaths of 3 of the young men."
Not probably.
Definitely did. And after months of investigation, the coroner who held the inquests, they also said there were a large number of very serious and very basic investigative failings. And then after that inquest, the IOPC said that they were going to reinvestigate the conduct of the officers involved in the case. So they were basically going to look into it again because they were like, oh, got a little bit more heat. But there hasn't been anything back from that yet. They've not been able to give any more information. And then Baroness Casey carried out an inquest in Metropolitan Police from February 2022 until March 2023. Not just, as I said before, not just in response to these men murdered in this story, but also for Sarah Everard and other victims that were harmed by members of the Met Police. Her findings reflected much of the same feedback that has been found in other investigations, but she also stated that she believed that the Metropolitan Police was institutionally homophobic, with even 30% of LGBTQ plus employees of Met Police said that they had experienced bullying, and 1 in 5 said that they had experienced homophobia. Another inspection carried out by HMI CFRS, which is Her Royal Majesty
Not her.
something.
His
Majesty's
Majesty's
investigative something of crime and police. I can't remember which was, but it was about fire rescue service as well. So it was basically they're looking into everything. I can find that. But
not the firemen too.
Oh yeah, everything. No, well that's just the name of it. Let's find out what HMICFRS stands for. Is
Fire and Rescue.
His Majesty's Inspectorate of Constabulary and Fire and Rescue Services. So it's another independent inspector. Independently assesses and reports on the effectiveness and efficiency of police and fire services. They also did their own inspection, and that was a really interesting read. They found that, as well as all of the other issues, they also found that there were problems within the processes within Metropolitan Police. And 5 main issues that arose, not just in this case, but again across multiple cases, was that there's not enough training that's provided to instill in officers an investigative mindset. Again, understatement of the year. Oversight and supervision are poor, such as lack of supervision when inexperienced response officers attend a report of an unexpected death. Record keeping is unacceptable, such as poor quality death reports with basic details omitted or incorrectly recorded. Policy and guidance is confusing, such as an overwhelming amount of policy and guidance, often undated and poorly constructed, that causes confusion. And intelligence and crime analysis processes are inadequate, which can lead to the reliance on luck to identify links between deaths at a local level and make it less likely that any links between minor incidents and crimes that may be precursors to more serious events are identified. Which, again, understatement.
Do you know what? If it's anything to do with money, though, they are hot on it. If you commit a financial crime,
oh yeah, big time. Those are the important ones, don't you know? They found out that undoubtedly there were and still are homophobic officers serving in the Metropolitan Police, and equally there was a lack of understanding of the lifestyles of those that they were investigating. But as shown in Baroness Casey's inquest, these are not the only issues that need to be addressed. In Baroness Casey's inquest, they spoke not only about homophobia but about
misogyny.
There were loads and loads of different issues that came up.
There's currently an investigation into the head of the Met or something. I was reading on the news yesterday, and he was involved in WhatsApp groups where they were mocking Harvey Price, who...
Yeah, I've seen that, yeah.
There was a number of pornographic jokes about just very misogynistic, very, very disgusting things being said. And of course, it is currently being investigated. The man who is being investigated says that this is all being falsified. But however, there was also, apparently he said, you need to stop sending these, otherwise you're going to get me in trouble. So yeah, and that was going on within the police.
That's ridiculous.
Well, yeah, we'll look into that.
I just don't have the words to be able to explain how frustrated I am about this case and those poor young men that didn't deserve what they went through, and should have been honoured in the very least at finding justice quickly and efficiently. I mean, that's the very least that the police could have done to honour them in their death. But alas, it just sickens me to think.
Can you just tell us their names again so we end on them?
Yes, we have Anthony Walgate, Gabriel Cavari, Daniel Whitworth, and Jack Taylor.
So, oh jeez, that was a rough one. Screw you lot who missed out on all the signs.
Yeah, I know. Please follow us on everything. Leave feedback and reviews. And why are you looking at me gormless?
Sorry, I'm so tired. Yeah.
reviews,
We are
follow
26
us.
to Life Pod on YouTube and Spotify. Listen on both, because you know what, it gets our views up. So if you like interchange, that'd be great. And subscribe on everything. 26 to Life _pod is TikTok and Instagram. Rosie's in charge of those. So
I will be getting better at them.
Go and leave her some constructive criticism. All right. Oh, I love y'all.
I love you too. I will speak to you soon.
I'm letting you edit this episode because it's an hour and 50 minutes.
Bye.
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 I'm going for a nap.
Bye.
I'll call you
Me too,
later.
probably.